Please welcome back Dr. Valerie Purdie Greenaway.
So I see that I follow award-winning comedians, the professor. Okay. So I am back to have us think about what is it that we've learned today. We have heard some incredible, incredible stories. And what I would like to suggest is that if you imagine for a moment that maybe what you heard today wasn't extraordinary. Maybe what you heard today is our new reality. How exciting would that be? And maybe it's the case that women on a daily basis are starting multi-million-dollar companies that are helping girls reinvent and engineer as they're playing. And maybe it is the case that we have producers and writers and singers and all of the fabulous people. This is part of our new daily reality. And with that in mind, what I want you to do is just take 1 minute, maybe just even 30 seconds, to just think about what is it that you learned and what do you want to do? Because we have had our time on the stage, and now as we start to wrap up and close, what are you going to take with you? What I want to do with my last few minutes is just share a few insights based on science. One of the things that is absolutely wonderful is in your app, there are tools that are empirically grounded that help you think about what you can do personally and what you can do at work to embrace ambition and break stereotypes and bias. And I just wanted to illuminate a few of them. One of the things that I think is most important for us to do, particularly as women, is ask. And that means ask for things. What we know is that it's not so much the case that women are not as strong as negotiators as men, but oftentimes we just don't think that that is what's supposed to happen. I have women in the lobby that are founding companies, that are starting companies, that are building companies. Ask. Ask for what you think you should ask for, get a little scared and uncomfortable, and ask for some more. What we know is that when we look at items on surveys like I have successfully attained a better wage or benefits for myself through negotiation, or I've attempted to attain a better wage or benefits through negotiation, or I have not attempted to attain a better wage or benefits through negotiation, while we know that it's the case that women fall in all three categories, they're disproportionately likely to fall into the third category. We want to be disruptors and change that. Number 5, some of the research that I do with executives have women and men together. And one of the things I want us to think about is paying attention to language. And I'll give you examples. So what we have here is just a basic survey among executive leaders. And we ask women and men, I perform better than X% of other people in this class. And it's a very sort of challenging negotiation class, and they're trying to gain money and all sorts of things. And what we find is that here on the x-axis is just the number that men and women fill in. So I perform better than X% of the class. And on the y-axis is just density, which just means the number of people that fall into that category. And little sort of basic statistics 101, what you have is just a natural mean distribution for women. What this is saying is that women are right in the middle. They say that 50% of people in the class are better than me, and they say 50% of the class is not better than me. If you notice, men are just a little bit over to the right. And so what they're saying is that there are more people in the class that are behind me, and there are fewer people that are ahead. How do we interpret this very accurate data? The data is what it is. What people say is women are less confident than men. We need self-esteem books. We need self-help books. We need to figure out what we're going to do. I want us to disrupt the norm. And I want us to say that women are realistic and men are overconfident. 'Cause, 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 ' And what that does is that it changes the baseline. The people that need to be thought about are the ones that are overconfident, not the ones that are underconfident. And that is something that we can do in our daily lives. Number 4, challenge gender norms. So I was working with this company, and this company was saying, well, we have this gender disparity, but it's not our fault. We don't know what we're going to do, diversity lady. And I said, well, tell me about your promotion program. So they said, tell me about your promotion program. And then they said, well, here's what happens. There is this kind of social mobility penalty, because it's absolutely essential in order to be promoted to partner that everyone, regardless of gender, has to pack up their family, move to Europe, and they have to work overseas for a year. And it just so happens that oftentimes when the family is headed by women, they can't leave, so we just can't promote them. So I call this the social mobility tax. And one of the things you could do is you could say, well, do we really need to do this? Is there something that the company can do to help these women go to Europe with their families for a year? Or we can challenge gender norms by saying, what is the specific skill that is linked to going overseas that you absolutely have to have that you cannot get here? And as it turns out, when you ask companies these kinds of questions, they just kind of come up with, well, this is what the CEO has always done. Oftentimes, the norms that are out there in society are just based on what was done in the past. But if we start to challenge these norms and ask, what is the skill that goes with this, we can start to disrupt and change the norms in a way that level the playing field. Number 3, bring in men and boys as allies and give them something specific, and I do mean specific, to do, watch, or experience. I have been just so inspired here. My husband just so happens to be away, and my mom happens to be right downtown. So what I've been doing is I've been sending my mom snippets and content and saying, read this, look at this. And my husband, I'm like, you see my new dress? You see this looks really nice, right? Okay, so what is wrong with that? What's wrong with that is my mother is getting the content and my husband is getting a photograph. Now, I hope it's a nice photograph. But what we want to do is we want to bring in men and boys as allies. The research on this is somewhat discouraging, but it's crystal clear. Research by Michelle Hebel at Rice University shows that men are more effective allies than women when specifically it comes to issues of gender discrimination, gender bias, and implicit bias. Our hope is that it changes someday, but that seems to be a very consistent finding. If everyone in this room, and there's 1,000 people in this room, commits to showing one man in their life the content and asking them to do something different, we will have changed over 1,000 men in an afternoon. This is something that we need to do. Number 2, talk to girls and young women about gender bias. Or maybe based on the panel earlier, they need to be talking to us, right? But there are so many books out there, and they're wonderful, about how women and young girls' bodies are changing, particularly in adolescence, and what's happening to them physiologically, and sometimes what's happening to them emotionally. But there isn't enough out there on what is happening cognitively. One of the things that you find is that certain parts of the brain are really starting to crystallize right around 11 years old, where they can think about institutions, and therefore they can think about people in institutions and institutional change. The adolescence is a time that is cognitively ripe for us to talk to young girls about gender and talk to them in very intelligent and thoughtful ways. One of the things that'll happen is they will be inspired. But the other thing that'll happen is that we will change. And the last but not least is we need to commit to support women. This is something that was a little bit of the elephant in the room, But sometimes women are not as encouraging as we should be to other women. And we have our own implicit biases. And while today was wonderful, we need to commit every day to take a woman, sponsor them, mentor them, and bring them along on all of our journey. We need to commit every day to support women. And when we do that, our institutions change, our families change, and our lives change. So I encourage you to think differently, be a disruptor of bias. And that's all I've got. Thank you.